I'm doing great. I'm doing great. When we were thinking about different episodes, we were thinking, should we do more about the summer? Yeah, perhaps, but we have a lot of episodes on summer, so we want our listeners to kind of go back and listen. How to connect with peers over the summer. We have episodes on that. But then I was thinking, we've gotten a few questions lately to the Smart Center. And I know you and I really didn't talk a whole lot about this before today. But one of the questions was, I want to understand about the treatment approach. I'm a little confused. And is it a separate treatment than other treatments out there? I'm a little confused. So we send this person that reached out resources, and they still needed some clarification. So I thought to myself, let's do an episode on kind of the underpinnings of SCAT, what it really is and what it's not.
Mhm.
And the way I thought we would start is with a question. So many people say, how do I get my child to talk? I mean, how many times do we hear that? How do I get my child to talk? I'd love people to ask, why is my child not communicating in this situation? Rather than how do I get them to talk? Why are they not? And I would say for me, that was the basis of SCAT. SCAT evolved over a period of time. It wasn't an overnight thing. And it really was a result of when I was working with selectively mute individuals as a physician, started the nonprofit, the Selective Mutism Association, way back when. I really saw it like a lot of people, child not speaking. How do we get them to speak? But the thing is, as I started to work with families through the nonprofit, through working with families to help them, I realized that not speaking was truly just a symptom. And so the question is, why? Why are they not communicating in this situation? And that's the basis for SCAT. It's a conceptualization of the whole person, not just a symptom, but understanding who they are, what is causing the mutism, what is keeping it going, and kind of where are they in this journey in terms of the different settings, in terms of how are they communicating, like a baseline, which
Mhm.
is how the social communication bridge evolved. So you've been in this field for over 10 years, pretty solid as a clinician, as you went through many years working as a Communicamp counselor at Communicamp, working with families, treating families, working with kids, teens, and adults. So you've been in it. You lecture at Communicamp, you do it all. So, in your words, how could you describe this to somebody?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times I almost like to explain how selective mutism is, if you think about it as like a cake, right? And if you think about how you go to a bakery and you see like a display of cakes, right? You might say, oh, okay, like this one looks nice, that one looks nice, that one looks nice, right? But they all have different ingredients. And I think that, you wouldn't just grab a cake, right? But rather you might want to know, well, let me learn a little bit more about what this cake is all about, right? And so I think that when I explain that a lot of times to families, I actually think it really helps them with that visual because it's almost like a recipe, we always say. Like,
Do you think
everyone
maybe they're thinking about eating the cakes? Because when you started
maybe.
talking about cakes, I was like, well, wait, what kind of cake? So you're right. The first thing that I thought of is, wait, it looks good on the outside, right? But what's inside? What is it? Is
Yeah.
it chocolate, vanilla, strawberry? Is there a little mocha in there? Are there little chocolate chips in there? What makes that person who they are? What makes that cake who they are? So that's a good analogy. But go ahead. Sorry for interrupting, but I started thinking about cakes.
No, that's okay. I mean, you kind of just said it though. I think like a lot of times we have to be thinking about all of those types of ingredients, and if we don't think about those ingredients, we miss potentially like a pivotal piece of what kind of puts all those pieces together. So I do think that those underlying whys of selective mutism are so important. And what's really fascinating is so many times we'll get children that we work with and they might overcome certain aspects, but maybe we have a little bit of some question marks in terms of some of their underlying whys. And let's say a family at that time is like, I think they're fine. Like, we don't necessarily need to work on certain things. And then maybe like years later, we find out, oh, wow, there's some underlying other diagnoses that are maybe going on. That's what was creating some of that shutdown, years back when. And that's just one scenario. I'm not saying that happens for everyone, but it just gives you that picture that we really do want to conceptualize. We really do want to kind of dive deeper. And I think that's one reason why people have shared they enjoy, this type of approach and they enjoy this type of treatment because we don't just look at that symptom of talking, right? We obviously discuss it a lot and we talk about talking, right? But we do it in a way where we try to understand and we go underneath that. And I think in doing that, we're able to, instead of just kind of putting that band-aid on and saying, okay, here's a strategy to help with that, we talk about all of those challenges, right? Because let's say you have a child that has a learning processing challenge. If we're just expecting them to talk and we give them an intervention in school and we're like, okay, you got to tell your teacher, 5 things about what your favorites are, a child with a learning processing challenge is going to really struggle with that. And that's not because they, don't want to share that with their teacher. They might just need someone to help them break that down. They have some processing concerns. So they might need a choice to kind of bring them in because there's too much time to think and process. So if we don't know those things, how can we help our children succeed? So I think that, going back to your original question, I just think a huge piece of SCAT treatment is those underlying whys. And when discovering that, we're now able to kind of take that first step into treatment.
I want our listeners, now these are great points. I want our listeners to just take the word SM, and I say this at Communicamp all the time. And I even have a visual because I have a new presentation. And one of those visuals is the word SM, and you see somebody tossing that word, selective mutism, into a trash can. And I may have listeners going, wait, what? What do you mean throw it in a trash can? Like, this is your expertise. This is why we're listening to you. And here's why. The name stinks. It's a horrible name for what this is. It's a social communication anxiety that has factors into the development of SM, what may be causing it, and then factors into, and it could be those initial factors that caused it that are maintaining it. Like you said, an underlying why. Maybe the child has sensory processing, speech and language challenges. Perhaps they are neurodivergent and maybe they have ADHD or dyslexia or autism spectrum disorder. And so many people are focusing on the symptom rather than the underneath and understanding.